Hey students, what's up? Hope y'all having a great day. Home from school by now, hopefully. Um, this past Sunday, we finished talking about the idea. We finished looking at Proverbs, the first three chapters of it anyway, and we talked about this idea of trusting God. Right. The first week we talked about our view of God's going to influence our view of His wisdom, and how we view Him is going to determine how we view His wisdom. Right. Who He is to us is going to influence that. Not only that, but in week two, as we looked at some of Proverbs 2, we talked about treasuring God's wisdom, that we need to treasure it above all else because that's what's going to lead us to valuing it and applying it in our lives. So this last week, as we looked at Proverbs chapter 3, one of the critical verses there was verse 5. It says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not lean on your own understanding." And verse 6 continues, "In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will make your paths straight." And that was in contrast to Proverbs 2, where we talked about the crooked path of the wicked, right? You remember the analogy we did with William walking across the stage, trying to walk a straight line. It's a lot easier when you have someone shielding you and protecting you, right? But that was a lot of Proverbs chapter 2. And so in chapter 3, we see that a lot of it comes down to trust. Do we trust God, right? This trust is going to lead to us treasuring Him, treasuring His wisdom, and is going to influence our view of Him. The more we see how good He is, how faithful He is, loving He is, and so on, the more we see these things, the more we're going to trust Him. And so my hope and prayer for you guys across your lifetime is that you would deepen your trust, that every day you would see God do something that makes you go, I can trust you more. As you see His dependability, His faithfulness, His goodness, His sovereignty on display. Because a lot of times we like to think we can do it our own way, or we're kind of afraid of what His best might be, right? Jamie mentioned that on Sunday during our discussion time. Sometimes we're just kind of afraid what God's going to do. We know He's got our best interest in mind, but we're just kind of afraid of what that's going to look like, the sacrifice we might have to make, the stuff we might have to walk through in order to experience God's best. And so my hope and prayer is that we would learn to trust Him more, all of us. That as we continue to live our lives and continue to be disciples, that we would deepen our trust in Him. And that's understanding, that comes from understanding who He is and seeing His faithfulness demonstrated throughout a lifetime. Is that the more we walk with Him, the more we live for Him, the more we're going to see He is trustworthy, He is good. And ultimately, at the end of the day, we're going to see that trusting God leads to living a well-lived life. Trusting God leads to a life that is very well lived.